After many, many years of lies being told about me and my family, there comes a point where, again, going back to the relationship between certain members of the family and the tabloid press.
The cautious facade Prince Harry has been putting up for years has now been destroyed by breaking news from London. According to reports, a classified financial file that was obtained from St. James Palace's closely guarded archives verifies the disastrous figure the Duke of Sussex has made a valiant effort to hide. A confirmed debt catastrophe worth £150 million and £100 million that might ruin everything he's created in California. This is no longer tabloid conjecture. There are no unidentified sources murmuring in the background.
A lot that I can forgive, but there needs to be conversations and then in order for reconciliation, and part of that has to be accountability.
The Palace insiders claims that we're examining records of financial collapse on a magnitude that would destroy even the richest famous people. And although everyone thought King Charles was getting ready for a vacation, reconciliation with his estranged son, I can forgive a lot of things, but conversations are necessary, and accountability is a necessary component of healing. Behind closed doors, something much more serious was taking place. A phantom summit required location in London late last night. Senior was carried by unmarked Range Rovers. Royals through the rain-soaked streets to a financial emergency rather than a family meal at Clarence House. St. James's Palace audit. Forgiveness was not the topic of conversation around the mahogany table, or mending broken relationships. It was solvency. It was survival. It was if Prince Harry's association with the monarchy could be sustained. The palace defended itself against Harry's damaging interviews and tell-all efforts for years. However, this evening, there was a significant change in strategy. In the face of an urgent request for a large bailout to save the Montecito mansion and pay off growing debts, Prince William and the King's financial enforcers made a momentous choice that will reverberate for many generations inside the Windsor family. They are doing more than simply denying Harry access to royal cash. They're allowing the creditors to take over. They are witnessing the real-time collapse of the California dream. Additionally, they're doing it with icy, deliberate accuracy. The query plaguing Buckingham Palace, it's straightforward but terrible tonight. How could a prince grow up in an unthinkable accumulate $100 million in debt? And why won't his relatives come to his aid? The ledger man. To comprehend the reasons for the panic that is spreading over the Atlantic, the guy who presided over the table at St. James's Palace last night must first be understood. Emergency conference. It wasn't a diplomat with family mediation expertise. It wasn't a friendly royal assistant attempting to reach a compromise. It was the Privy Purse Keeper, Sir Michael Stevens, referred to as the live ledger in royal circles. Stevens is a man who sees the monarchy as a business that must endure in any case, not as a family soap opera or a long-standing custom of sentimental or familial bonds. The institution's financial standing always supersedes individual members, including princes. The report, Sir Michael's presentation to Prince William and King Charles, was nothing less than a forensic analysis of financial catastrophe. It was not sentimental. It lacked empathy. It was just mathematics, revealed in spreadsheets and columns that depicted a disastrous mishandling. Stevens reportedly said, "The subject, Your Majesty, in a measured and clinical, is not a scandal. It's math and the figures are harsh." He revealed what he called the anatomy of debt when he opened the dossier. A horrifying explanation of how $100 million vanishes when you try to live like royalty without the institutional backing necessary to maintain such a way of life. There was silence in the room as Stevens went over every expense area, every unsuccessful business endeavor, and every court case that took millions without producing outcomes. King Charles became more and more distressed. Prince William clenched his jaw. Princess Anne, who was adamant about going, sat motionless, taking in every detail despite the late hour. They were seeing more than just one man's financial planning gone wrong. They were observing the repercussions of severing ties with an organization that has long provided an unseen safety net, even for its most members of the SUID. $14.65 for the Montecito anchor $1 million. The real estate anchor that is gradually drowning the first cut was the deepest. Sussex's. Stevens cited the $14.65 million remaining mortgage on the Montecito estate, property that they paid more than $14 million for in 2020. However, it wasn't only the primary sum that made the room quiet. Palace financial analysts were aware of the terms that were concealed in the fine print. Discovered, it's possible that the loan had fluctuating interest rates, which have surged in the American economy following the pandemic, while the Federal Reserve battled inflation. The property is more than just an asset. According to a Palace source, every month it aggressively consumes money. The burn rate is enormous. In Montecito alone, property taxes are above $200,000 per year. The Palace needs housekeepers, groundskeepers, security coordinators, full-time employees, private chefs, at an annual cost of millions. The upkeep of those well-known another six-F figure is gardens that offer seclusion from paparazzi drones. Annual cost. Every year, Hollywood blockbuster revenue is needed. Stevens informed the group that Prince Harry hasn't had a chance to break even. Blockbuster in a very long time. The streaming agreements that were meant to support this way of life have fallen through. Following the documentary series' failure to reach audience targets, Netflix essentially ended their partnership. Expectations. One executive publicly referred to Spotify's early termination of their collaboration as grifters on their way out. The advances have been squandered and book deals have been finalized. As public interest declines and criticism grows, speaking engagements have decreased. Once a representation of affluence and independence, the Montecito home is now a concrete albatross dragging them down, underwater financially. The $28 million in legal bills and the vanity tax followed. What Sir Michael Stevens referred to as the vanity tax, the startling legal costs accrued as a result of Prince Harry's compulsive need to combat every perceived minor in court. The audit projected that legal disputes cost $28 million. $28 million was spent on non-building assets across several countries, on making money, but on attorneys who frequently fell short of Harry's demands for victories. Stevens described the High Court's disastrous losses, emphasizing the unsuccessful RAVC case, where after resigning from royal duties, Harry filed a lawsuit to keep his taxpayer-funded police protection. In addition to lost the case handily, but he was mandated to reimburse the other side's significant legal expenses. Millions of the term burning capital refers to the money that had to be sent to the government he was suing. Stevens clarified, but silence was never truly achieved. The testimony was used as leverage by detractors, the court transcripts were made public, and the money just disappeared. There were instances of billable hours that yielded nothing worthwhile, against British publications that took years to resolve, costing money in legal expenses at both goals, while producing stories that continuously harmed Harry and Meghan's reputation instead of restoring it. The Strand effect was brought about by privacy litigation. Attracting more palace experts came to the conclusion that the legal approach was to draw attention to the very material they were attempting to suppress. Fundamentally incorrect. Harry saw lawsuits as a way to feel validated. Instead of making calculated business decisions, he preferred to win debates and punish adversaries. One legal analyst said, "He's fighting battles that cannot be won in courtrooms, whether the cost of victory exceeds its value." Observed, since his true desires are approval, affirmation, and no judge can give him a verdict that acknowledges he was correct all along. A large portion of this legal warfare was funded by extended credit lines and loans, which is a genuinely heartbreaking revelation, predicated on the presumption that any shortfalls will eventually be covered by the royal family. Lenders thought it turned out that King Charles would never permit his son to fail to fulfill his responsibilities. This presumption will soon be put to the test. The $31 million paranoid premium security expenses. Lastly, Stevens revealed what he called the paranoia premium. Since Harry lost access to Metropolitan Police, security expenses have skyrocketed. Protection after departing from royal duties. The dossier showed an astounding $31 million spent, due, or anticipated for personal security information for the previous 5 years. $31 million for security that, in the opinion of security specialists, far surpasses what the majority of celebrities, including A-list Hollywood stars, consider essential or long-lasting. After leaving the UK, Harry lost the protection of the Met Police, whose job it is to protect working royals, safeguarding the establishment of the monarchy itself. He substituted private contractors for them. Former Secret Service operatives, former Navy SEALs, and elite bodyguards that are paid on an hourly basis and command high fees. The infrastructure Harry has built around himself and his family is similar to what one might anticipate for a head of state dealing with. The infrastructure Harry has built around himself and his family is similar to what one might anticipate for a head of state dealing with active dangers. Not a famous person residing in one of the safest, most exclusive neighborhoods. A number of armed guards working in shifts, armored vehicles, travel security for any movement outside of Montecito, and counter-surveillance technologies. Stevens said that he is funding presidential-level security on a podcaster's budget. His evaluation was harsh, but true. The expenses of protection lead to a vicious cycle, and Harry truly worries about the security of his family, concerns that might be justified but are undoubtedly heightened by leaving the institutional protection he used to take for granted. These anxieties fuel security expenditures that consumes his resources. He is compelled by financial pressure to pursue media deals that create exposure, which raises his perceived prominence and thus his sense of need. More security. Stevens claims that the business model is structurally insolvent, decided that Prince Harry is not merely momentarily impoverished, he is running a business that loses money each morning. The streaming catastrophe, $26 million wasted. In addition to the mortgage, court costs, and security expenditures, the audit exposed yet another category of catastrophic loss: the media and streaming agreements that were meant to prevent everything. In 2020, the Netflix contract was announced with great hoopla, pledged more than $100 million for various initiatives, such as documentaries, children's programs, scripted shows, feature films, and television series, intended to position Harry and Meghan as storytellers and content producers on par with the Obamas, who had inked a similar arrangement. But the documentary turned into a master tutorial on how not to run a production firm. Due to interest and controversy, the series they did produce attracted a sizable initial audience, but viewers' retention fell sharply, and the audience for later episodes was enormous. Deterioration. The material was condemned for being tone-deaf, conceited, and devoid of the Netflix anticipated widespread appeal for their investment, but promised follow-up projects were stuck in development hell. Scripts were commissioned and shelved. Concepts were presented and turned down. Nothing progressed as quickly or as well as Netflix required, and the relationship irreparably deteriorated. Financial analysts claim that Netflix secretly rejected to extend the agreement, and the Sussexes most certainly received just a small portion of the $100 million headline amount, perhaps as little as $25 to $30 million over the course of the agreement, with production using the majority of it. Expenses, overhead, and employee pay. The Spotify agreement further fell apart. Amazingly, after creating just 12 episodes of Meghan's Archetypes podcast, significantly fewer Spotify ended the collaboration before the multi-year multi-show commitment they had promised to. When executive Bill Simmons referred to them as grifters on his own program, the public humiliation was complete. According to one media outlet, they took millions up front, produced little material, and left before meeting their commitments. That kind of reputation makes it nearly impossible to secure future deals, the analyst explained. The streaming catastrophe is a symbol of missed opportunities as well as lost revenue. These agreements were meant to serve as the cornerstone of post-real financial independence. The Oak Room Summit, when they collapsed, left a hole in the Sussex business model that has never been filled. Family turns into money. The scene of last night's altercation carried massive symbolic weight. This was not the cozy, homey atmosphere of Clarence House, where King Charles usually, family business is conducted in the Oak Room of St. James's Palace, the ancient center of royal governance, where state business is conducted and diplomats are accredited conducted, where the most heartless judgments of the monarchy have been decided over ages. 4 persons were seated around the old mahogany table: King Charles III, Prince William, Princess Anne, and Sir Michael Stevens apparently felt the weight of the situation. Profound finality, akin to the ambience of the fabled Sandringham Summit in 2020, but the stakes seemed far more pressing. King Charles, speaking first, he was obviously older and conflicted between duty and parental instinct. The monarch had a very parental sensibility, according to palace insiders who knew how he thought. He looked at the $100 million number and, seeing debt, as well as potentially damaging humiliation, the throne indefinitely. "We cannot have a son of the king appearing in American bankruptcy court," Charles allegedly said. "It creates a spectacle we cannot control," he added, his voice heavy with the weight of possible scandal. "It produces for allowing him to fall so far, the monarchy appears harsh and spiteful." In order to address Harry's most pressing needs, Charles proposed a private settlement, a sizable loan from his own resources, obligations. Instead of being a gift, it would be set up as a loan with repayment restrictions. It would be private, preventing a public spectacle. It would give Harry more time to reorganize his finances and, ideally, provide steady revenue. Charles looked around the table and begged, "We help him again. We turn off the creditors. We avoid the disaster of a royal bankruptcy, which would be covered for months by every newspaper on the planet." However, prior to the mood abruptly and significantly changed when the proposal was made to the other people in the room. William's terrible argument against the bailout. Prince William avoided looking at his dad. He examined the figures. He was examined the future. The prince made a motion that entirely quieted the room. Wales opened his briefcase. Neither sympathy nor a checkbook came out of his pocket. He produced a black leather-bound document. The business liability evaluation. William calmly said, "This is not about saving Harry, but slicing like a blade through the space. The goal is to stop us from financing our own demise." Prince William made a forceful, meticulous, and ultimately convincing case. He maintained that saving Harry wasn't a royal responsibility or an act of family charity. The monarchy would suffer considerably more from this disastrous strategic mistake than from letting Harry deal with the implications of his decisions. William stated, "We need to face an uncomfortable reality. Harry is no longer merely a private citizen residing in California. His actions are calculated yet devastating. And that is where the story truly ends tonight, not with reconciliation, not with forgiveness, and certainly not with a royal rescue. What unfolded behind the closed doors of St. James's Palace was not the collapse of a family bond, but the final confirmation that the institution has chosen survival over sentiment. Prince Harry's journey from protected royal prince to financially exposed private citizen has reached a point of no return. For years, the monarchy absorbed the shocks, the interviews, the lawsuits, the accusations, the reputational damage. It endured quietly, believing that time, distance, or maturity might soften the blow. But money has a way of stripping away illusions. Numbers do not negotiate, debt does not care about titles, and creditors do not bow to royal lineage.